Hi everyone, my name is Julia. I'm the co-founder of Unicorn Lab. I am happy to host this virtual invest meetup for you today. Thanks for joining us. Please let's start from the introduction. Unicorn Lab is a Silicon Valley-based consultancy company. Our team has been engaged with searching and supporting startups from different sectors for more than 5 years, and we have received a huge network of investors. We are excited to help the brightest minds that solve the planet's biggest challenges through disruptive solutions and technologies and make human life more ecological, healthy, and happy. Please join us on our mission. We are passionate about biohacking. We run BiohackingCongress. It is an international platform dedicated to furthering the advancement of biohacking, health optimization, biotech, digital health, and ecological companies. We believe that biohacking is powerful and can make positive changes for each individual and globally. That's why we built this community environment and platform for exhibition, exchange opinions between biohackers, health optimization experts, and also entrepreneurs and investors from health tech, biotech industry. Please join our community, follow us on social media, and attend our events. We invite you to join Biohacking Congress in Silicon Valley on November 20th. There you can learn from more than 15 top speakers, explore selected health tech and ecological companies, and meet like-minded people, friends, and partners. If you cannot join us at the venue in Menlo Park, you still can watch our live stream. We are going to live stream all day. One of the purposes of Unicorn Lab is to promote beneficial cooperation between entrepreneurs and investors from biotech, health tech, wellness industries. And for selected startups, we offer to complete our fundraising program. We offer them leverage our global community to get their brand awareness, visibility for industry investors, and of course, raise capital faster. And here are some of our goals and objectives during this program. We engage investors, we build investors pipeline, we help startups raise capital. Here is some of selection criteria for startups. If you are interested in this program, please apply on our website at the section for startups. We run this program with our partner, Get Funded Tools, and I would like to introduce our partner, Anna Green, co-founder of Get Funded Tools. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Julia. Hi, it's a pleasure to be here today.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Just, I guess, a couple words about us. We're Get Funded Tools. We help impact companies to get funded. Everything from early stages to the later stages. Specifically, we love working with Series A companies, the type of companies you will guys see today on this meetup. So stay tuned. These are our favorite companies we've selected among hundreds of health tech startups. So I'm more than excited to give the stage to them, and of course, welcome our investors on the panel today. So I'm just grateful to be here and excited for the pitches.
Thank you, Anna. We are also excited to have you as a partner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia.
And here's our all amazing team. And we are happy to host this virtual invest meetup for you today. This meetup will be started from the panel discussion about impact investment in innovation startups working to promote longevity and health span. And the second part of this meetup will be dedicated to pitch session. Here is selected startups. They are selected for our fundraising program and they will be presented today. Sun Health, Macromoltek, and Suggestic. And today with us will be experienced investors. We are so honored to have them with us today. We will introduce them right after the discussion. And also we have such great funds with us today and accelerators. So now let's start from the panel discussion, and let me invite to our virtual stage our experienced speakers: Kate Butts, Managing Partner, Longevity Capital; Safa Raschi, Founder and Managing Partner, Think Plus Ventures; Brian McMahon, Founder, Expert Dojo; Lou Zhang, Founder and Managing Partner, Fusion Fund; and Paul Brosnan, Managing Director, India Bio. Thank you. First of all, could you please introduce yourself? We would like to learn more about your experience. Could you please introduce yourself? I think Kate will start, yeah?
Sure, I'm happy to start. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting us, Julia. As you mentioned, I'm a managing partner for Longevity Capital, which in turn is part of a Deep Knowledge Group. Deep Knowledge Group has 4 components. I'm sorry, which one of them is the venture arm, but we also have been producing open access analytics on the topic of longevity for many years, 5+ years to be exact. And this branch is called the Agent Analytics Agency. Also, we work with a number of nonprofit collaborations that are focused on longevity as well. So I look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you. Okay, Safa?
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I'm Safa Raschi. I'm the founder and managing partner of Think Plus Ventures. We are an early stage fund here in Silicon Valley based in Palo Alto. Before starting Think Plus Ventures, I was an angel investor, invested in 30 companies, had 7 exits sold to public companies. And before that, I was an analyst on Wall Street. Our fund is somewhat differentiated from other early stage funds in that it is a thesis-based and market-driven rather than just being founder-focused. We, of course, take great care in selecting the best visionary founders, but we start with a major pain point that we identify in the market that we have a thesis around, and then we look for founders and products that match that problem. We just finished our first fund, and that's up 2.5, 3x in less than 2.5 years. We are raising our second fund, which is a $30 million fund. We do focus a lot on digital health because we have identified it as a macro level major pain point that has probably about a 10 to 20 year path ahead of it. So that's a big focus for us. And as such, I'm really happy to be here and see some great companies.
Nice, nice. Brian McMahon, please introduce yourself.
Yes, great to be here. Lovely to be joining all of this, these wonderful people on the panel. We're an early stage fund here in Santa Monica in California. We invest in approximately 1 company per week right now. We take companies at the earliest stage. We fit the classical place of an accelerator with a few differences. And number one, 90% of our companies are international that we find. So we invest a lot in India. We invest a lot in the MENA region that we consider to be very exciting right now. We invest a little bit in Europe and a little bit in the UK, a lot in Latin America, and we like Canada as well. And really, we just have a favoritism towards either immigrant founders or international founders. We do early checks, $100,000 into companies, and we'll follow on with $1 million checks afterwards. We don't have a fund. We don't want a fund, really. It seems like a lot of trouble. It's just myself and my partner. So, and we'll invest in about 100 companies next year.
Thank you, Paul.
Wow, 100 companies, that beats me. So
I'm tired already.
Hey, that's awesome. That's great. I'm here at IndieBio in San Francisco. You see people behind me because we have Casper, which is a CRISPR-based assay company developing it. Our labs are downstairs. We don't know if we were one of the first VC firms to actually put labs in our building. So I'm a general partner at SOSV, which runs accelerators around the world. IndieBio is now in San Francisco and in New York. Through IndieBio, we accelerate about 40 companies a year now. We have graduated so far 136 companies over the last 5 years across human and planetary health. And as for our sort of specific orientation or bias or variant perception around longevity, I'd recommend everyone look at Decoding the World. You can probably go read the longevity chapter for free on Amazon. You can certainly read lots of free chapters there. But we have learned a lot from doing lots of companies and being able to work with the companies in our labs that affects how we perceive these things.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Lujan. You're just in time. Thanks for joining. Please
Hi,
introduce
everyone.
yourself.
Hi,
Yeah.
Julia. Sorry for being late.
It's okay. We just started.
Yeah. So you mean the panel started or we just...
Yeah, panel just started and now everyone already introduced themselves. Okay. And please, now your turn. Please introduce yourself.
So I'm Lu. I'm the founding and managing partner of Fusion Fund. We're a Silicon Valley-based, Palo Alto-based VC firm mainly focused on deep tech and healthcare investment. And I started the Fusion Fund back in 2015, 5 years ago. So far, we have 3 funds under management. Average fund size is roughly $100 million, and we seed pre-Series A stage. Prefer to lead and also okay to co-invest. So far, we have over 60 portfolio companies across the United States. And we also are growing our team in the past couple of years. So for me, my previous background as I was more on the entrepreneur side. So I was running my own medical device company called Ascento, focused on type 2 diabetes, early stage diagnostic. I ran it for a couple of years. I started when I was a student at the Stanford University with an academia background of material science engineering, so deep tech background. So after I sold my company to Boston Scientific a couple of years later, that's when I started to do investment. I was trying to support my fellow founders and later found out, investment is also a very interesting job. That's the reason after joining a larger VC firm as a partner, I left there and started Fusion Fund back in 2015.
Thank you. Impressive. Yeah, thanks for joining. Yeah, it was so nice to get more information about your experience and background. Thanks for sharing with us. And first question to you will be about what is the driving force behind VCs for impact investment in health tech, wellness, longevity tech industries? Very often, venture investors are looking for elaborate technologies in pursuing the next unicorn, and they often don't do proper due diligence in sustainability and impact for their value proposition. And maybe in health tech, wellness, longevity tech, those that may not be the case. And how do you think what is driving force for investors in impact health tech, biotech, longevity tech companies? Who would like to start?
I'll take a crack at it. So broadly speaking, many family offices around the world that are themselves LPs into lots of funds or have their own fund, they often have a general interest in health but it's more commonly a poignant and very personal interest because of a beloved one. It could have been generations before, or it could be a child today in their family, in their relatives network, who is suffering from a disease, and they have a lot of interest in that disease itself. And so the challenge from organized impact investing, especially like at the bank level with a lot of the high net worth, ultra high net worth families that are organized, is sort of matching the investor to the startup. That's actually kind of a significant challenge because, Julia, as you said, they could go on Facebook and they could look for what companies are doing something in any one space, who's solving this particular thing, and they wouldn't have any way to diligence it. And they don't really know quite how to price it, and they don't have the benefit of sort of professional investors at the same time. I think longevity comes into this in a way to help try to treat something that we're all dealing with and treat something across the board. It attracts people's interest because it gets them out of that sort of single disease state type of investing. One of the big challenges is from a portfolio strategy as well, is that when you're doing impact investing into health, and if you start getting into a specific disease, you can get overweighted very easily, and you can sort of not have balancing mechanisms in your portfolio to make sure one risk isn't offset by others. So we work with a lot of trying to move our companies along with a lot of impact investors in healthcare. And these are some of the challenges that we see, which is really just trying to give them some confidence to replace that diligence, and orchestrating that kind of confident feeling about what they're doing. And then lastly, I would say just a lot of impact investing took interest in COVID in the last 8 months. And we didn't see a lot of movement, but we saw some towards COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I can add in a comment as well.
Yeah, of course, I was going to ask you, Brian, because as far as I know, previously you invested in early stage tech startups from any industry.
Yep. So we started general, and I think, look, from a VC perspective, we all try and do due diligence. Sometimes, we have Theranos disasters, and sometimes we have really great outcomes, but everybody tries to do diligence. And then there are characteristics and things brought in, such as the emotion of what's actually being done. And we started off being generalist, and we wanted just to find the greatest founders around the world and then provide a bridge into America. We saw that there was a gap in the market there, and we started working on that. And then we just started coming across some really wonderful things that were being done in the world. And every VC is going to approach this from the perspective of, we have to provide value to our shareholders, even if it's ourselves or if it's outside LPs. Like, that's the principal objective of a VC. However, if value can be provided to shareholders while at the same time providing just really good in the world, it would be great. So, longevity and diagnostics and all of them, in some stage, they blur into one place, right? Because if things aren't diagnosed properly at the beginning, then they don't live very long. So we had a company that came to us out of Yale that had a patent in Duke, and they were looking to provide a diagnostic tool that would reduce the cost of sickle cell diagnosis by 90 to 95%. So for us, we know like 250,000 kids a year die in Africa because of that. So it's kind of a no-brainer. So if we just look now, if we can find a company where we have domain expertise within the people that are around us, whereby we can see it solving a huge problem, we can see that the market is good enough, we can see that maybe the diagnostic tool can move further, we'll go there. I mean, I will say we also love the genome space as well. We have 2 companies that are directly in genomics. Both have raised like $30 to $50 million.
I understand. And Lujan, could you please also give the answer from your perspective?
Yeah, happy to. I think especially, this discussion for impact investment being a very popular topic. Last year I was in a web summit when we'll still be able to travel. I remember, because it's in Europe. So lots of the question is on panel to me is regarding how to really make sure we could do impact investment and also typical, financial result driven investment together. I think healthcare is a very good overlap for achieving both goals. Because one thing I really want to push back is sometimes people think, oh, do you need to sacrifice your financial return in order to have an impact of your investment, which is not sustainable. The best scenario would be we were able to generate sustainable, very good financial return, but meanwhile, investing good technology has a positive impact of the society. So healthcare definitely is a very good industry. The reason I've been focused on healthcare initially is because I was running my own medical device company for diagnostic. As Brian mentioned, diagnostic go along with longevity. And now with COVID-19, this is a very strong push for people really allocate capital to healthcare in general. And furthermore, because of the concern on the mental health, now there's more kind of capital resources allocated to mental well-being or wellness in general. So I think this is all the good trend are happening right now. And another thing I think, besides we talk about, like family office capital, another driving power is really the integration of the new technology with the traditional healthcare sector or even longevity sector. Because we used to be, it's really hard to do continuously monitoring our continuous diagnostic in order to provide personalized result for us to achieve the goal, no matter for diagnostic or longevity. But now with no matter AI, machine learning, or even, edge compute, we were able to really power by the technology to push the digital transformation for the whole healthcare industry. And the technology make it possible, then definitely gonna attract more capital to back this direction for further investment in the near future.
Yeah, you are right. In 2018, 2019, and 2020, we see rapid increases in investing into well-being and care delivery companies. Yeah, it's very good. Kate, maybe you could also
I
answer
can
because
try, of course.
yeah, your fund is
Happy
dedicated
to,
to
yes.
this
Happy to
industry.
add my 2 cents, and the excellent points were already made by my colleagues. In terms of impact investment, that has been very much our focus for over 5 years within our group. We really think that aging presents a huge socioeconomic burden to the society. It, as Paul mentioned, it does affect everyone. We also observe that the COVID-19 era, if anything, refocused on human health, and many traditional investors who, let's say, focus on such sectors as real estate and tourism and all that, they now actually are redirecting towards human health. We like the slogan that health is the new wealth. Aging itself is a cause of many chronic diseases. And lastly, I will also add that our focus in terms of investing in longevity is perhaps slightly different from many funds that are focusing on biomedicine only, because we believe there's a lot that can be done today that does not necessarily depend on clinical trials. And such sectors involve, for instance, age tech, because there are companies there now. We have older people living now. There's actually 1 billion of them globally. And it has to do with improving lives of currently living older people. So that's a sector that is important. We also are big believers in preventive medicine and precision medicine, especially applying AI to precision medicine data coming not only from older and sicker people, but younger and healthier. And then also we like the fintech sector as it applies to longevity. And I can elaborate on that later on.
Thank you. And Safa?
Yeah, thanks. These are great areas and great insights. So I really enjoyed listening to it. Our approach to impact investing within healthcare is a little bit different. It might not be very sexy or appealing, but to me, especially as we look at US or other developing economies, especially, the biggest impact is to enable those who are disenfranchised, those who are disadvantaged, to have access to healthcare, to be able to have knowledge about their own healthcare, to know how to communicate their problems. I see this a lot in this country. One of the problems that one of the kind of startup ideas that actually we put forward to Stanford team the other day was to come up with a platform that you can engage these people, not necessarily just to provide the healthcare services for them directly, but to engage them in their own healthcare, to make them knowledgeable about what to look for, where to look for different healthcare options. We think that that actually will have the largest single impact on a societal and global level when we can bring in everybody here. If you look at the US, for instance, we have many problems with our healthcare. By all accounts, it's the most inefficient, one of the most inefficient healthcare systems in the world in terms of how much we spend as opposed to what we get at a societal level in terms of life expectancy and other factors. However, for people like us, we enjoy the best healthcare. I don't have any problem with my healthcare in this country. But my housekeeper is not the same. They have lots of problems. They're not knowledgeable about when to seek help. They don't know where to go to. Even when they have insurance, they don't really have enough confidence and interaction with their healthcare provider to stay healthy. And I think that is the most important area where we really can get a double benefit of both doing good for the society as well as taking care of the entire healthcare system by lowering the cost. So we look into those inclusion platforms. We look into where we can make an impact in disadvantaged demographics and bring them into the fold of having good healthcare.
Yes, as we see, a lot of investors see these benefits, and according to Silicon Valley Bank, in 2019, investment in health tech were $7.4 billion US, and it will rise in 2020. So yeah, venture investors are interested in this area, and this can also show us some trends, and let's discuss which trends do you see in this industry. And best opportunities for investment. And maybe you can give some examples of successful cases, the most successful, as you know. Who would like to share your?
Well, I'm always ready to talk, but I want to give someone else a chance.
Yeah, well, please talk.
Go ahead and start, Bo.
Okay.
We'll
Okay.
follow up.
Look, it's important to understand that like investors shouldn't all have the same perception. We should have our own perceptions, and we have to believe in our perceptions. So at IndieBio, we believe that the body is kind of like a game of telephone. And in the old game of telephone, one person says something to the next, and the next person says something to the next, the next person says something to the next. And at the end of that game of telephone are what's called vital signs. Vital signs are only good at measuring whether you're alive or dead. They are not big data. They aren't the beginning of the game of telephone. Our fundamental thesis is that we need to measure the data around the way that cells talk to themselves and talk to other cells. And the way that the body is actually communicating to itself. We need to measure that rather than measuring way downstream at the other end of the game of telephone. I believe that the industry is getting much closer now, but it's not quite there. So for example, where we're measuring messenger RNA, we ought to be measuring microRNAs. If we're measuring microRNAs, we shouldn't be using the traditional MER base with 2,800 MERs. We should be looking at MER isoforms. Once you're getting into MER isoforms, now you're actually communicating and listening at the beginning of the game of telephone. In a similar way, if we're measuring exosome signaling, we should actually be measuring what's in the payload of exosomes and what are those exosome signaling proteins doing on the outside. 10 years ago, we thought this was cellular garbage, but it's actually how cells communicate at a distance. We have companies, an example, we think that multi-omics is a very, very strong and powerful field. And for us, the key challenge there is to get multi-omics down in cost to what Safa was saying, like it's bringing this down so it's an annualized test. So how do we do it better? So we have a company, Dalton, out of UCLA, that uses in a single pass of a mass spec, they can do thousands of biomarkers because they're basically fragging everything in your blood, running it through a mass spec, and then rebuilding it in the computer. So thousands of biomarkers for only a couple $100. That starts to bring multi-omics to the masses. That's just one example. In liquid biopsy, obviously Grail's out there. We believe that there is much better ways to do that. If anyone saw Rod Knight's paper in Nature back in March, by measuring microbial NGS of what's going on, you can actually read tumors way before they're there, better than measuring sort of the tumor itself in its NGS. So it's all about, to us, finding the diagnostics that power early intervention into people's disease states. If we can capture things early, we dramatically lower their cost. So I feel like the industry is close, but isn't quite there. And I'm not a believer, I would actively say, I think, because we have a variant perception, that measuring all this rough big data at the end of the game of telephone is not going to tell you what's really going on. That's our approach.
Yeah, by the way, measurement is ultimate biohack. It's just a basis of health optimization. And we here in Biohacking Congress, we see a lot of innovation technologies, wearables, platforms dedicated to measurement. And they measure, they help to keep your data, they have to track your benchmarks. A lot of innovations, at least several devices and at least several platforms. So we saw they just started to build these startups, and several of them will be at our Biohacking Congress in Silicon Valley, Levels Health. Hands up, big platforms, startups. So really, I see a lot of new startups in this area.
And one thing I do want to echo, Paul, is the importance of having the device, the hardware software integration side, because I was in a panel early this year at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. And I remember there's other fellow investor on my panel. They try to persuade a founder only go with purely software solution with no hardware and then bypass FDA, directly go to consumer. I'm like, no, because maybe because of my background, no matter hardware background or medical device background, device part is very important. On one side, we need a medical device to do very precise measurement. And then we utilize the data to do personalization, but you need to have a foundation. Another thing is, when we talk about digitalization, it's not about software eating out the world. It's about software hardware integration because the entrance of data is hardware. It's medical device, it's sensor. You need to have this integration in order to make sure the result company provided are accurate enough, and meanwhile could be really accepted by the existing healthcare system, and also could be able to go through FDA to get approval. I really, really want to encourage all the founder, don't bypass, especially digital health, don't bypass FDA. Get FDA approval will be a very big plus to the company, and also it's critical. And besides that, another thing related to AI in healthcare, because AI in healthcare is such a trend that now everyone talk about it. Although back in 2017, when I was promoted in JP Morgan, like most of the people still want to stay away from healthcare. But AI definitely could show the full capability in healthcare system because healthcare has a huge amount of high quality data. But on the other side, I think the important part is which type of application we want to invest, our founder should build is really, really make sure the solution is empower existing player rather than replacement. Because we saw company came in saying that, okay, we're gonna have this solution, replace nurse, replace doctor. Somehow it won't work. Like we have lots of company, what they're doing is, for example, they have this maybe purely software solution. One company called Sado Medical, they recently closed an oversubscribed Series A round. They raised around summertime this year during COVID-19, still got multiple term sheets because their solution is a software sit on top of CT scan, PET scan, and MRI scan. And if for example, you run the CT scan with low resolution, the software could upgrade it to high resolution. So it's a very good integration between the startup application with the traditional medical devices. And they were able to get FDA approval, 2 FDA approval within 1 year. So this is the type of empowerment argument we're talking about for AI in healthcare solution. And another thing I want to quickly tackle is really related to the data. As I mentioned, healthcare has huge amount of high quality data, but not necessarily most of them are structured well, ready to be used by no matter AI, edge compute, all this new technology. So I think another trend we found very interesting is no matter company or solution be able to structuralize the data to empower all this healthcare system provider to provide their data to some company to use it, no matter to small startup company or even for insurance company. The last one is actually the one I mentioned earlier in the first discussion point topic is the mental health. I'm a big fan of, I'm very interested in mental disease, no matter diagnostic. We even have several therapeutic company focus on dementia, no matter diagnostic treatment. I think we know so little about mental disease for the past, like I would say, centuries. And now finally we have the technology available for us to do continuous monitoring and also be able to find a correlation between the mental disease and also other symptoms of our body. So I think that's a very interesting trend, especially now with COVID-19. Related to that is also mental well-being, like depression problem and other mental problem. So I think that's another very interesting trend. Big challenge, but also big opportunity for us to watch.
Yeah, interesting. We are talking a lot about data, and let's remind all these talks about security of personal data. What do you think about this?
I think the question of how we can make use of data is very important because I think Paul mentioned that we just sometimes think that if we gather the data, we'll end up someplace. And this is not just in healthcare. I see this in many other industries. I've had dozens and dozens of entrepreneurs pitch me and saying, this is our model, we'll do this marketplace. And by the way, our real gold mine is that we'll gather this data and we'll make use of it. I actually want to put forward something which may be, if not controversial, not very popular, which is data is overrated. We do need data and we can make use of it. But over the past 20 years or so that I have been observing data collection in various places, invariably, the potential use of data has been far below what was initially expected. It doesn't mean we shouldn't go after data. I'm just saying we have to have our expectations more realistic about how useful the data can be and also, especially in healthcare, can we find patterns within data? Just to have the data collected, let's say from blood samples. We had a company recently pitch us on COVID-19, and they were able to detect some patterns of COVID in blood samples, and they actually had a lot more data from it. So they had signed up a number of deals, and they had, I don't know, millions of data points in there. But to be able to actually make actionable and impactful decisions from that data will take years and years. So that's one point I want to make, that it is great to collect the data, but as we saw, for instance, in fitness devices, initially when Fitbit came in, everybody was excited. We have to measure everything. Then they realized that just by measuring, you don't really get anywhere. But now gradually we're seeing the collection of all this data, even though some of them are low quality. But when you put them all together, you can make some sense of it, and you can actually correlate them with some pattern. But we're still in the beginning of it. I would say 5 years from now, we'll be able to have much more useful conclusion from the devices that we wear, like Fitbit and other ones, about the data that we collect. And I think the same thing applies to much deeper cellular level data that we can get, that we will need a lot more time to make sense of those things. And those are, to me, kind of the long shots, which we should definitely focus on and invest in. But those I put in a category of areas that will need long investment horizons, long research periods, and potentially will have really revolutionary impact, like imaging, AI and imaging, and other areas, or different biomes. On the other side of it, there is some more practical applications that are fairly easy to use. You could almost call them the low-hanging fruit: remote patient monitoring, connecting patients with their own data, empowering them to take actions on their data. Some of these things are easily doable and are fairly impactful. The only hurdle for them is really acceptance by institutions, reimbursements, and a few regulatory issues. So I think plus we try to kind of have a dumbbell approach. We focus both on the more futuristic, more research-driven approaches. We have a couple of genomics companies we have invested in. I just had a call with a aging company that has really very, very interesting, deep technology and a new approach for treating aging. But we also focus on areas where we actually can have impact and potentially profit right now, which is more easily doable right now.
Julia, I'll throw in a point or two if you don't mind. So fascinating intro. I know Dalton. It's a great company, Po. And so just some. I really enjoy this panel actually, because it's about finance, and yes, we have to get returns, but we're really a small part of trying to save the world in our own little way, and that's a really beautiful thing. And I also think what Lou said about depression is very sure. I think if COVID didn't get us, then the election probably got us in the last week or two. So it's definitely been a tough year, and we'll come out of it a different way. My thesis or my thoughts really are that VCs don't really have a thesis. We just have bias, which has been built up over years, and that bias is not always a negative bias. A lot of the time, it's a positive bias. If we see something being done a certain amount of times, and that's why it's a little bit like trying to tell our kids that, you know, when they grow up in life, things will be a lot easier because the experience will culminate. And based on that, we'll just make better decisions, and so will they. And I think within VC, it's very much the same. You know, we started Expert Dojo really as an accidental fund. It was because I just couldn't quite understand why there was a 98% failure in startup and why it was okay. I'm not worried about what makes unicorns, because there's a perfectly contrived and manipulated system to create unicorns. It was more about what causes the problem in startups in the first place, of why so many startups actually fail. And then we invested in our first 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 companies. And then we started to get hit with a bunch of folks in the healthcare space. And I always remember one of the first ones. It was a TB company, and she was based over in India, and just a genius with a phenomenal team around her. And just tuberculosis for me is just a stupid disease. It just shouldn't exist. And the fact that it exists is not because we can't find a cure for it, not because we can't build algorithms to deal with the mutations of it so that we can go in between the different solutions that we have. It's just because it's a poor disease that's been let go. It's the same as sickle cell. It shouldn't exist. Like the fact that 250,000 children beneath the age of 5 die every single year in Africa simply because they are not diagnosed is just stupid. In mass spectrometry is another phenomenal space. Like, we have a company that we invested in the mass spec space, who are putting together a center of innovation for mass spec, because their belief is just drug development. I mean, very much like Dalton in their own way as well. They believe that drug development is just stupid. Like, it shouldn't cost $4 billion in 12 years to develop one drug. Like what part of any of this is okay? And then we took another company over in Belarus, who are a pathology company, a robot pathology company. And their view was that it's just silly that we're just only 2% or 3% of the population get to even have serious treatments like cancer done properly. It's almost like cancer is a disease for the wealthy and not for anybody else around. So they've created artificial intelligence and machine learning that's now been deployed in a number of hospitals in Europe, which will actually allow us to be able to get second opinions with pathology tests. My point of this whole thing is we actually were looking for a name for the fund, because we ended up having 50% of our companies being in the medtech space or the healthcare space. And we just decided to call it the Stupid Fund, because it's just all silly. Like, this stuff that exists in the world doesn't need to exist. And the lovely thing about it is, from a venture capitalist perspective, is we can make money, and it's okay to make money. It's actually good to make money. We should be able to bring these things and bring them out to the world. So my thesis, we'll call it, has kind of shifted to a place of, do I see a phenomenal entrepreneur? Does that entrepreneur showcase the ability to execute based on what they've done previously? Do we have an indication that I can measure on math rather than rather than having to be a futurist? And if we see that, and then if we can add in there that it can do tremendous good in the world and it fits into our stupid scale, then I'm happy as a camper.
So the most startups in which you invest, they leverage artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and machine learning to enable their products and solutions, correct? So most of them have AI.
For me?
Oh,
Yeah, so we have a med tech. I mean, our sickle cell company is a medical device, which is coming out of Yale, and the mass spectrometry will be about 15 mass spec devices, which will all be centered over in Boston. That's LongevityTech. We have another company that's artificial intelligence out of Israel that deal with preterm. Like, preterm is another very silly thing. Like, why should 10% of women have preterm? It's just ridiculous. So yeah, virtually all of them are either a device or they are, some kind of smart stuff built into things that require it.
And if we are talking about software and hardware startups, which would you prefer? So, I mean, do you have some special preferences for hardware startups or for software startups in this area?
So I always remember, sorry, very quick, I'll just add this, because I always remember the very first company, one of the first companies that we did a very small investment into was a scooter company many years ago, just to go off topic. And that's just because everybody should have a failed scooter company or you're not a proper VC. And then suddenly we had 4, I don't know, huge, big, almost a football field of scooters. And our problem wasn't like, how do we write off the money, or it's just like, what the hell do we do a football field of scooters? So look, not thinking as a VC, I love hardware devices because they're required. Like, you can't have the software without the hardware. Somebody has to do the heavy lifting, and you can't pass that to someone else. And these devices do tremendous amount of good, especially in medtech. If I'm not left with a football field of devices after something goes wrong, I do feel better as well.
I understand. And
if I may add a couple of points, and thank you everyone for sharing your views. I agree very much. In terms of our investment thesis, it relies very much on our definition of longevity industry. Actually, there is a book that we released recently that's called Longevity Industry 1.0, and summaries and open access. But basically, because we define longevity industry beyond biomedicine and include, let's say, P4 medicine there, as well as HealthTech and longevity financial industry, that kind of affects how we invest. Granted, we were the seed investors in silico medicine, which is AI for drug discovery. They also work on biomarkers of longevity and a number of other exciting things. But we're also interested in the other sectors as well, especially something that is very ready to go to market. Like HealthTech is one of the examples. Another thing is during the summer of 2020, we became seed investors in Longevity Card, because essentially what it does, it's an intersection of fintech, longevity, health tech, when a card holder, regardless of their age, the person who cares about health and financial stability going forward, essentially enters a certain of their daily activities and encrypted health data if they so wish. And based on that, they get personalized health and financial tips, as well as access to Longevity Marketplace on a discount basis. That's one of the examples. And then lastly, with respect to neurotech, we're also big believers in that space. We prepared an open access analytical report. We can go to neurotech.com. There's actually, so it's a landscape overview of everyone in this space. And again, it's open access. There's a great conference coming up at the end of the month devoted to that topic. So for everyone who focuses on this field, I highly encourage attending this virtual event.
Thank you very much.
I'll add just to Brian's and point, for us, probably 2 out of 3 of our company, they have to have 2 out of 3 between AI, hardware, and bio. Like, we do have, there are some exceptions, but I completely agree that hardware is often a very necessary step to get at measuring something that isn't there. Software modeling, but we only have one pure software company, 1063, which is drug design company. But even then, they're want to build hardware for sort of high throughput chemistry on the back end. So like in some way, like I would say, the robotics for high throughput at the very least on the hardware side for these systems to make it work.
Yeah,
But
do you
hardware
know
is not.
from a consumer perspective, and we know a lot of testimonials from biohackers that hardware devices and wearable devices allow us to get much more better quality of benchmarks than if we will use just usual like iPhone, which can measure something. Yeah, so devices still is very necessarily. Yeah, Lou? I interrupted you, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine.
No, I was going to just say a couple of words on hardware and the software aspect of it. And I do agree that they're both necessary, but from an investment point of view, as a VC, to me, hardware is a lot less defensible because it just can be duplicated a lot easily compared to software. One of our companies, for instance, Spry Health, has a wearable. It is a hardware, but their really core technology is in the algorithms of what they do after they measure. Otherwise, it's just a fancy Fitbit because it can really be done much faster and cheaper, let's say in China or other places. So yes, hardware is necessary for the whole platform, but I think you can really build an IP just on the software part. Even that is becoming more difficult these days, but I think to build an IP on the hardware is far more difficult than to do it on software.
Yeah, absolutely, you are right. Okay, thank you. My next question about this market, which is crowded, because we see investment rise and we see health startups booming and a lot of IPOs. And the market started to be more crowded. So, startups face these new challenges at this crowded market. So how do you think what health tech entrepreneurs should consider to become successful at this crowded market? So what competitive advantages they should consider to become successful here now?
Differentiation is like differentiation. You've got to differentiate. And so I think that's the most important thing. Like Brian was just talking about every VC has to have, a scooter company, right? And he's right. And like right now, every VC needs to have sort of a protein degrader, ProTac company in their portfolio, right? And everybody's got to have a fertility company in their portfolio, right? Like, and that's okay. It's just they need to be different, and sometimes it overlaps. So, like an example is, let's say you're doing nucleic acid medicines, and it's like, okay, there's a lot of nucleic acid medicine types of approaches from ASOs and CERNAs and all this stuff. What is nobody doing there? Mitochondria, nucleic acid medicines to the mitochondria, nobody's doing. So you can do that, even though you can do all the other cells too. You can at least be, first look is, oh wow, nobody's doing that. I think that's a strong first impression.
A lot of devices to recharge mitochondria. I know. Red light therapy.
Well, a lot of people doing stuff on mitochondria, but that not necessarily at a nucleic acid level, right? A lot of stuff in longevity is focused on mitochondria for sure.
Yes.
But so, I mean, it just like differentiation, I would say, is most important to avoid the crowd.
Yeah. To add on to that, I think definitely, if I definitely agree with Paul that for something different, differentiation is critical for competitive advantage. But if you found, okay, this is something others already do, then just simply do it faster, cheaper, and better. So, I see better, faster. Faster means like operation execution need to be faster, and cheaper. Like cheaper is very important. And beyond that, another important thing is easy to integrate. Especially in Silicon Valley, I met lots of technical founders, especially healthcare founders. They have such a fancy solution. And when they try to integrate a solution with the customer, they kind of expect that the customer gonna have a 4.0 upgraded infrastructure to integrate their fancy solution, which won't happen. So they need to really think to provide a solution could easily integrate with their existing customer infrastructure, and then probably upgrade from there together with their potential customer. So I think integration is another important part, add on to like cheaper, faster, and better. And meanwhile, another thing I think is very, very important is trying to find strong partnerships, because now, as you said, it's a super crowded market, and there's so many different solutions, good founders, and it's hard for founder just to bypass any existing player, try to replace them, then become the number one. So leverage the partnership is very important. Do we have a couple company, they have a team of 12, team of 7, they were able to get contract from Pfizer, Novartis, range from a couple million to 20 million. Then they will be able to run faster compared with other competitor. Not necessarily means their solution technology is better. It just, leverage the partnership, they will be able to leverage their customers' distribution channel rather than build it themselves. So I think that's another thing for reference for founder.
Yeah, and I think here we also can mention that they should give right value proposition and try to collaborate with existing healthcare and clinical models because they shouldn't replace medical doctors and existing healthcare. They should provide some additional to this healthcare. Yeah, right.
So I'll add one extra point, because the thing about this is there's no right answer. It's the culmination of all of these answers. What Lou said there about partnerships is vital. Like it's about, I always remember a great entrepreneur said to me years ago, I have the very best product. I know, he said, I know 3 things. I have the very best product on the market. I have the least expensive product on the market. And in 12 months time, somebody else will have the best and least expensive product on the market. So it's about fast scaling and making sure you get there. But what I'd love to add on top of the differentiation and the partnership and the integration is the brand. And it's one of the things that actually saddens me most about what's happened in the last 10 or 15 years. Without question, America was the greatest storytelling nation on the planet, bar nobody. That's what we did best. And over the last 5 or 10 years, and I don't want to blame Lean Startup, but I do want to blame the interpretation of Lean Startup, is that there's this feeling now that we just need to get product out to market as quickly as we possibly can. And we need to start getting customer reaction to that product. And we kind of bypass that beautiful piece at the beginning, which is creating this really beautiful story about how it affects. So like even if you take the sickle cell device that I was talking about, even the founder, when they were speaking to me, they were so deep on the detail of the features of the product. I'm like, I don't care. Like nobody, no consumer cares about the feature of your product. They just care about the little face of the little girl who's in Africa, who's about to die because she hasn't been diagnosed because it costs $62 to get diagnosed for sickle cell, and her mom and dad are not going to be able to afford it. Like, so I think we need to get back to a place of where entrepreneurs really try and discover what that why is, what that really deep feeling is, and they get that out, because that part of healthcare is really everything. Like our health is what makes us live, it what makes us be here, and people need to touch that again.
But Brian, they won't get there unless investors like us actually encourage and reward that kind of thinking, which we don't. We are looking for a product that can go to market in 12 months and can scale fast, and it's easy for adoption. And as you were talking about, what will make it work, what I've seen is that a product that's nice to have does have a chance, but it's very, very hard. Long sales cycle, long sales. You have to have a product.
I don't mean a bad product. I mean a great product where just the founder can get the story to the consumers. If they get the story to the consumers, then the consumers will love them. They build loyal fans. They bypass like our model of, hey, just get Facebook ads and like buy a bunch of stuff and then people will come in. It brings that deep, loyal force that would be with them. But your point is still valid.
Yeah, here is a question. Usually we see waiting for return during 1-2 years. So is it the same in this industry? Because here is trial period much more longer, and customer don't pay exactly to start up. Maybe it should be through insurance companies, through clinics, if they collaborate together. So is here in this industry the same situation that VC is waiting for returns during next 1-2 years or longer period? How it is?
Was that to me or somebody else?
Safa was talking about that he's looking for products which will give return in 1 year.
Yeah, no, I'm not necessarily looking for it. I just tell our entrepreneurs, be prepared for it. Sometimes I love products that might take more than a year to sell, actually. But I would only invest if I know that the company has enough funding to go through the sales cycle. I recently had a call with a company that had invented a new device to be used in operating rooms. And just as we all said, it was clearly the best, it was lower cost, and it performed better than the other devices. But still, for this entrepreneur to convince the doctors to switch was a pretty long task. And while he was having some success, it really wasn't turning over the way that you would expect. And this is not atypical, because just like many other industries, the doctors are used to operating like this. Unless it is a major pain point that they deal with every day, they rather have that 10% failure that they know about than start something new. And they don't even have time to try it. So if you have something that really is revolutionary, but it will take a long time to sell, that's great. But you have to raise enough money. You have to deal with the right kind of investors who say, look, I'm going to invest in not just 1 million, but 5 million. And I know that this will take about 3 years to come to fruition.
Yeah, Kate, also a question to you. At this crowded market,
Yeah, absolutely.
competitive advantages is very important.
Sure, I think it is extremely important to avoid general pessimism about longevity. So this is why we focus, not on just biomedical sectors. We think that overestimation of positive results in preclinical trials in model organisms actually later results in failure of the companies. And we've seen a couple of big flops this year, as I'm sure you've heard. So, and our concern is that by association, let's say non-biomedical sectors of longevity industry can fall under this umbrella of negativity. So it's very important to, as mentioned, to diversify. as well as focus on some sectors that I've mentioned. And in terms of biomedicine, there was a great article in Nature earlier this year, which made a suggestion that instead of humanizing model organism models, it's more important to humanize computational models derived from animal experiments. So that's a couple of points that I have to say.
Good. I was curious about regulatory challenges for biotech startups, and maybe Paul can just a little bit tell us from his perspective, because it's also some of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, well, I kind of, as others said earlier, seeking regulatory approval, helping to create a moat around your company can be extremely valuable. We definitely have advanced a number of technologies that could kind of go either way. And I will say this, if you are on the fence, or you could kind of go either way, whether you're going to seek regulation or to not go towards it, you are in trouble. You cannot be both. You can be one now and the other later very clearly, but you will really confuse investors, because what Safa said, there are a lot of consumer investors, and they want to know you are in fact going to market, not like, but maybe we could be a therapeutic. Like, that causes all sorts of trouble across investors. People who want you to go to market hear that and they think, oh no, this entrepreneur is actually going to take 10 years to get to market when we want them to launch next month, and vice versa. People are not serious about attacking regulatory and going through it and finding ways not to cut corners, then and they're sort of always looking to cut corners, then they're not serious about pursuing the regulatory path. So I would just say it's okay to do it one after the other, but do not be I could do either. And do not walk into meetings saying, what do you think? Give me your advice. And I would say that just doesn't kind of work, is our experience. To us as investors, we're fine. Like, we don't mind that things take 13 years to prove real. But I will tell you, for alumni, it's very, very serious that you are finding that traction and finding those partnerships and finding a way to really create inflection points. And if regulatory is a long way away, it's a problem. You need to get developing your drugs. Mouse sucks as a model for human longevity. And the reason is mice live 2 years, humans live a really long time. I would love to see things done on bats rather than mice, because bats are much more like humans. They live a long time. If you can, now the problem is your science then takes a long time. The reason we use mice and the reason we use C. elegans is because they're really quick. But even the neuronal cells, like the brain, is a huge, bigger factor in longevity than I think anyone really values. That's part of our perception. But even if you're working on neuronal cells, those are not old. Unfortunately, they don't mimic. Our cortical neurons will live 90 years. And the ones we're testing in vitro are like a week old. And they already have senescence. They do this kind of features and you can work with them, but they're not really good models. And I actually think we need much better models to really try to unpack this. There's a massive gap between humans and the models that we use in this space. We're still investing in it and we're still actively doing it. We have quite a few companies, just signed another one that we're financing, but I would say I'd love to see like core technologies or really better models of what works here. And I'd love to see far more emphasis on the brain as the instrument of longevity, rather than just say cells or muscle cells.
I would second that. I would suggest that among the different systems within the body, we have the least understanding about how brain works. And of course, because of that, we are least equipped to deal with diseases of central nervous system. In fact, I was at a conference just a couple of years ago, and one of the CEOs of major multinational companies said, look, we have kind of just put aside our focus on it because we just don't know how brain works, so we're not going to develop drugs to deal with things like Alzheimer's or other diseases. So to me, it's kind of surprising that we don't have more focus on it compared to, let's say, cancer, compared to other types of systems, immune systems even. We have order of magnitude less understanding of how brain cells work and how brain modulates different parts of the body and how it impacts longevity and certainly our mental health. And I would like to see a lot more on that.
I heard on Anderson Horowitz podcast, they explained that now their modern researcher use brain tissue for researchers. Do you know? I think you know this. And this is not from mice or any other animals. It's from human.
We're actually looking to bring a company over from India actually. I mean, number one, genomics obviously is a space that I mentioned it earlier, but we have a company that have already raised about 50 million, but all of that was for studies. So we have one of the largest studies in the world of about 8,000 people, all the way up to the neck, not beyond the neck, but all the way up to the neck. But there's another really great company out of India that we just saw who are doing brain tests, and those brain tests are already being used in hospitals over in India. And even though it can't say you are 72% of what 100% would look like, it can tell you where you are versus where you were last week and the week before and the week before and the week before. And I think part of the lack of understanding of the brain is just because we don't do anything about it. Everybody thinks, oh my gosh, I just hope I'm okay for as long as I'm okay. And if I catch Alzheimer's or something goes wrong, well, that's bad luck. And actually getting very preventative and saying, how do we actually get to a much earlier stage in life and start measuring everything we have? I agree with 100% with the point on big data, but I love measurement and I love to be able to measure.
Okay, well, I mean, the simple thing is our whole network is, because Lou mentioned this, like understand that our whole network of investors would find a $50 million exit a disappointment. Sort of like, oh, that's nice. Okay, put it there. And that means for startups that they need to dream big. They need to dream really big and be really disruptive and have a vision where they could be a very, very big company. That's what our whole syndicate of investors are interested in. I admire other like syndicates and networks that are interested in other kinds of stuff, quicker returns. They're really happy with that. I wish we had that. We don't. But so definitely our bias is towards disruptive things that could be really, really big businesses.
Yeah, I think that open list, I agree with you. And here at the end of the discussion, thank you very much. That was so nice to talk with you. And thank you very much for that.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. And we'll stay on for the
Yeah,
other stuff.
you
Thank
please
you.
stay with us. That today we will be listening to pitches of 3 selected startups. They are selected for our fundraising program, and they will be presented today and at our Biohacking Congress. And we will provide a lot of fundraising services for them. Hopefully, we will help them close their rounds. And each founder today will have 30 minutes for presentation. We suggest up to 10 minutes for pitch and around 20 minutes for Q&A session with investors. So each startup will share screen, will show slides. Just I remind you about this. Please try to be as much efficient as you can. And yeah. So I see investors, all investors, please turn on your microphones and videos. We would like to have some introduction from you. Tim, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. And Julia, thanks a lot for your invitation. It's great to be here today. My name is Tim. I'm an associate at the Longevity Vision Fund. I joined LVF a year ago. Before that, I spent 5 years in strategy consulting, helping big pharma and biotech companies shape their commercial and portfolio strategy and optimize performance. Just a couple of words about our fund. At LVF, we invest in advanced therapeutics and diagnostic platforms and medical devices. Some of our recent investments are 4D Molecular Therapeutics, which is a gene therapy, a next generation AAV focused company backed by Pfizer, Reception Advisors, and others. Sigilon, an encapsulated cell therapy company backed by Flagship Pioneering, and Freenome, liquid biopsy company, which does the early cancer detection. So I'm really pleased to be here today and excited to hear pitches. Thank you.
Thank you. Vidya? Hello, hello.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I represent Red Tree Venture Capital, and we are a new life sciences fund that is investing in innovation that is coming out from academic institutions on the West Coast. So we focus on early stage companies, and we are quite involved in company formation as well. And we support the companies in capital as well as operational support, starting from the pre-seed round all the way to Series A, as well as Series B through exit. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Tant. Oh, hello, Tant.
Hi, my name's Tunde. I am representing the Blue Venture Fund. We work with the 36 Blue Cross Blue Shield health plans in the United States and the association. And we invest across the spectrum of healthcare, from healthcare services and IT to advanced diagnostics. And we're looking for things that are strategic values to the health plans, because that's where we're going to be able to add the most value. So pleasure to be here.
Sam's up.
Hi, everyone. Samasov here, Julia. Thank you for having me on the panel. Great to meet you all. I'm here from Civilization Ventures. We're an early and mid-stage startup fund that invests in deep tech across 3 main areas: synthetic biology, digital health, and genomics, for everything from diagnostics to platform therapeutics. We've been in operation since 2017, have about 30 companies in our portfolio. Just closed our second fund, which we're investing out of. So yes, very excited to be here. My background is I've been doing life science research for the last 10 years, started in cancer and glioblastoma, finished up my PhD from Stanford, studied stem cell biology, regenerative medicine, largely through the lenses of neuroscience, just trying to understand the molecular drivers behind neuropsychiatric disorders. So that's a bit about me, and excited to be here. Great to meet you all.
Thank you, Martin.
Hi, I'm Martin Tobias. For the last 3 years, I was the CEO of Upgrade Labs, which was a biohacking facility with Dave Asprey down in Santa Monica. I left there in March, and I'm back to doing angel investing. I've invested in 90 companies myself in the last 5 years. Recently in the biohacking and longevity space, I invested in this thing. It's the Happy, which is software version of over-the-counter drugs. And I have a group of about 100 guys where we're doing an angel list syndicate. I'm going to put about 5 million of my own capital in the next 2 years into early stage deals, and we're going to leverage that with about 20 more million with the other 100 guys that we have. We just closed 2 deals. One was a company called Silver Tree Labs, which is doing a new wearable for adults with RRE Ventures out of New York, and a medical records oncology company out of India called Mango Sciences.
Thank you very much. Happy to see you today. Hi, Adam. Thanks for joining us again.
Hey, Julia. Good to see you again. How are you? Thanks for the invitation. Delighted to be here. So I'm Adam Deacon. I'm Managing Director of the HealthTech vertical or Dream Ventures. I'm flanked by Elliot down there. Say hello, Elliot. He's part of the HealthTech team.
Hey guys, nice to meet you.
So Dream It is a venture fund. We're Philadelphia based. This is our 3rd fund. We've been at it for about 10 years. We've worked with over 130 companies. What's really unique about us, though, is while we're a seed and late seed Series A investor, and we focus on digital health and med tech, we also run what could be loosely described as an accelerator. We prefer to call it a growth platform, so that we're working with a very select number of companies, typically 6 to 8 companies at any given point in time, selected from the nearly 400 that apply to the program. And we pride ourselves in adding a significant value through this network of over 70 enterprise healthcare systems, payers, large multinationals, big pharma partners who give our companies red carpet access to decision makers within their organizations because they know we're bringing them the very best companies. And so that accelerates customer acquisition. We do the same thing on the back end of our program for our companies by getting them access to a network of nearly 1,000 venture funds who take a look at each one of these cohorts, decide who they want to meet with. Our track record's pretty good. About half of our companies will close an institutional round after getting out of Dream It, and then we co-invest in the vast majority of those companies.
Okay.
And so we're always looking for great startups. If you know any, just send them our way.
Good. Irina? Irina?
Hi, Irina Lanin with VU Venture Partners. We are actually, I'm a sector agnostic fund. However, I'm focusing there on the healthcare side. And a little bit of background to myself. I have 15 years of experience in big pharma with Sanofi and Merck. And most recently, I switched to the venture capital side, and I'm looking for now at healthcare in investments, and I'm very happy to be here today.
Thank you. David? David, hi. David, ciao.
Hello, Julia. Great to be back. So yes, my name is David Cao. I run a couple things. Number one, we have a small fund, I-15 Ventures. HealthTech is right now is our number one sector. Used to be the number two sectors. We also have Elevate, I-50 Elevate Accelerator, which is focused on earlier stage companies in HealthTech, education, and FinTech companies. We are California-based. I also organize Silicon Valley Entrepreneurs, which is the largest entrepreneur community in the Valley. And we run global startup competitions.
Yes. I also see with us Yan and Yuan Ping. However, they are muted and without video. All other investors, it seems we already had at the panel. Yeah, Yan Ping.
Hi, you can just call me YP Julia. Thanks for the invitation. So I represent Applied Ventures here. We are the corporate venture arm of Applied Materials, the world's largest semiconductor equipment providers. But we are also very interested in the intersection between semiconductor technology and the emerging kind of like omics analysis and diagnostics. And we have made a bunch of investments in the field, including a company called Ontera and another company called Altiview. So I'm looking forward to the startup pitch today, and always looking for new exciting opportunities out there. A little bit of myself. So I've been in corporate venture for a couple of years. Beforehand, I had background in management consulting as well as a PhD in biomedical sciences.
Thank you. So now let's start first speech. First speech will be Sana Health. Richard, we invite you to share your screen and please introduce Sana Health.
And hello to various of my long-term supporters who are there. Adam, very good to see you. And any of the other startups listening, apply to Dream It. They are awesome.
Wait, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Richard. Could you say that again?
Dream It are awesome. Everyone should apply. You can. No, joking apart, they were a very large part of us seeing where we fit into the hospital ecosystem. It was immensely helpful to actually go around multiple providers in a short amount of time and hear the sequence of feedback and what was actually needed in the marketplace. I mean, it was really invaluable. Anyway, on to us. We're all about chronic pain relieved. I had an accident in the Yemen in 1992. I was driving a Jeep down a road near the capital Sana'a, hence the company name. And I had a choice of a head-on collision next to a petrol truck or to go off a bridge. And I went off a bridge down into a dry riverbed, and all of that resulted in a nerve damage, in spinal cord injury, T8 to T10, so belly button level, plus a traumatic brain injury, plus an aortic tear. And all of that resulted in a nerve damage pain problem that was so severe I was given a 5-year life expectancy. So went through the standard of care. That hasn't changed in 28 years. There are marginal improvements in some areas of the standard of care, but basically there's no change. And so I had to find a solution. So how does this apply to everyone else? Well, most of you in the healthcare, so most of you know the size of the pain problem. The overall chronic pain problem size is 50 million people. Of that, fibromyalgia is one of the worst and most intractable and least serviced problems. 10 million people, the average person on fibromyalgia takes 5 to 8 drugs, one for each of the compounding comorbidities, and that causes its own problems in itself. Pain in general is 59% of people relying on opioids, and then obviously the problems that come from that. So as a market size, 77.8 billion is the treatment size for chronic pain. Within that, we believe there's a 20 billion market for fibromyalgia. The average person is paying 10K a year in medical costs. So the market needs a effective non-drug solution. So I needed it for myself, and it's clearly a need that other people have as well. So meet Sana. This is the current version of the device, and you can see it on the left there. What someone does is they put the device on, they press start, and they're getting a complex sequence of gentle pulses of light through closed eyes and sound through the ears, which is then generating a very deep relaxation effect in about 10 minutes. In early clinical results averaged across 3 clinical trials so far that are completed, 20 to 40% reduction in pain, depending on the type of pain it is, 49% reduction in depression, and 45% reduction in anxiety. And just for reference, that means we're outperforming tramadol, Prozac, and Xanax. We are also collecting data from the sensor in the middle of the forehead, and we're collecting subjective data every time someone is actually using the device. In the next generation of the device, that's going to enable us to tailor that to each individual with a closed loop feedback system, which we have very strong IP on. So we are treating all the comorbid symptoms. Now, this is one of the really big challenges in chronic pain, is you have pain, anxiety, sleep, and depression all in a complex compounding comorbidity. And within fibromyalgia, you're usually adding on fibromyalgia as well. And we are able to, because we're going to an underlying level, we're able to treat all of those different areas. So how are we working? So we're working with audio-visual neuromodulation. We are using a way to affect the auditory and visual cortex to use them as our electronic keypad into the brain. Now, because you've got 2 eyes and 2 ears, and the way in which they're wired into the 2 hemispheres of the brain, it enables you to actually recreate what's called hemispheric balance. Now, there was research done primarily on EEG of long-term meditators on specific standardized testing that showed the longest-term meditators all ended up with this thing called hemispheric balance. Now, originally, when I had my pain problem, I tested my brain on the same equipment. I showed that I had a very large disparity between the amount of activity in the 2 hemispheres, and I was able to fix that. That gave me my roadmap, which I was then able to fix. And over about the course of 3 months, it wiped out all of my underlying nerve damage pain. Now, all pain is a combination of central mediation, how your brain is processing the signal, and peripheral pain, the actual pain signal that's coming in. And in my type of spinal cord injury and TBI pain, it was 100% how the brain was processing the signal. There was a corrupted data stream, not really a pain signal. So very similar to a phantom limb. So we're a silver bullet in special cases like me. And the other end of the scale would be something like chronic regional pain syndrome, where we are a tool in the toolkit to lower the amount of opioids. Fibromyalgia sits smack in the middle of that, where it's a very large central mediation challenge, but you also have peripheral pain. The team to go off this, I've been asked this, I am now the world expert in this area. Tasha Bond was our mentor at MedTech Innovator. I poached her to be our COO. She's had 4 exits, all of them class 3 devices. So she's very well experienced in compliance and regulatory and manufacturing. Steve was with her in the top team of one of these companies that she exited, which was iDev, that exited to Abbott for 1.5 billion. And Jeff Bauer, we poached from Achille, who are the leaders in the neuroscience at FDA. And total 14, split between the rest was split between clinical and regulatory. So our go-to-market, fibromyalgia is where we're starting. Our early pilot of 20 people showed that we were 5 times better at improving quality of life than Lyrica, with 0 side effects. Lyrica, the side effects are so bad that 80% of people stop taking it. We, on the other hand, have 85% compliance at the end of a year, with people voluntarily using the device now, a year after that first trial. In that trial and in the follow-up, we've seen a 30% drop in all pain meds over that entire period of time. We are going to test a $50 a month paid out of pocket for the next year while we're going through the reimbursed process. Now, we are halfway through our pivotal FDA study with Duke, and that will read out in January. So if you look at the column on the right, Duke is a study that's underway now, or halfway through. The Mighty is a patient advocacy group that has 289,000 fibromyalgia members already. And they are our partner for rolling out the 1,000-person user test, which will allow us to test that paid out of pocket. And they are also our route to the first couple of 100,000 people that we want to target. Mount Sinai is a neuropathic pain study, a 120-person study that will be our second FDA indication. That'll be a 510K. Anthem, we've been having long discussions with about a back pain study for lowering the cost of lower back pain. Their internal data shows that when someone has a back pain surgery, it has an ROI of precisely 0. For a $40,000 treatment, that's pretty appalling. So they are trying to limit the amount of surgeries that people have by giving alternative treatments, and we are in discussions with them about that. Various other things in our pipeline, which I can come to in questions. But just on fibromyalgia alone, just on our first indication, if we get to 2% of the target market, we are at 100 million ARR. We're looking at a $50 a month subscription out of pocket to start with, at a higher price when reimbursed because we'll be integrated into EHRs. Our COGS at scale at $75, and I can go into more of this on questions. So yeah, the FDA trial is already halfway through. It'll read out in January, and then the Mighty study will start in January. So funds raised since we started, 11 million so far. That's been led in 3 rounds by Founders Fund. Thank you again to Dreamit and Adam, who've invested in us twice now, including the SafeNote part of the current round. On top of that, so this round has really been in 2 parts. The first part's been a SafeNote round, which is all internal capital. On top of that, we've been raising an equity round, which has been a 5 million raise. We've closed on 2.5 million already. We have some soft commits, but basically there's 2.5 million open. That is to get to 3 milestones. One is through FDA approval. The second is the commercial pathway study, and the third is the engineering to lower COGS. And just as a reference, the 3 comparators to us that had FDA approval and the first 500 plus commercial proof study, Carla Health, Achille, and Pear, all of whom had the first pre-money and the next round of being 150 million plus. Please join us on the journey to end chronic pain. Chronic pain is about how the brain amplifies pain, and that's what we're working on. We can't go after acute pain, but we can go after chronic pain, and that's what we're aiming to end. So over for questions.
Perfect. I would like to emphasize that we believe very much to this startup and this team. Yeah, investors, please ask your questions. Great technology, great device. Yeah.
Yeah, may I go first? Yeah, cool. Richard, thanks a lot for the presentation. Tim from Longevity Vision Fund. Couple of quick questions. So if you could share the feedback from providers that you got, that's the first one. And the second one is, this device, does it provide sort of a therapy as a one course, or do you have to use it continuously throughout your whole life to sort of to have the same effect? How does it work?
Yeah, so let me answer the second question first. So it depends on the particular indication. So something like we have a trial that we've applied for an NINR grant with UPenn on post-operative pain. If you have a knee operation, you have a knee replacement, you have a 60% chance of having lifelong chronic pain. We're aiming to cut that by about 50%. That would be a month use of device before surgery and a month afterwards. Something like my position, it was 3 months and I've never had to use it again. I'm now a health and wellness user. I use it every time I fly or every time I work too late and then need to go to bed. On fibromyalgia, we tell people use it twice a day. And then on top of that, whenever you needed to, because your symptoms are too much for you to enjoy what you're doing. We started at an average of 5 times a day. Each session is 16 minutes. And by the 3-month mark post the trial, the average person was using just less than once a day. And that's still the same a year later. So once a day appears to be the maintenance dose for fibromyalgia. So again, it depends on the degree to which it's central mediation versus peripheral pain. The chronic regional pain syndrome people, typically they were using 2 or 3 times a day, every day continuously. And if they stopped using the device, it took about a month for their pain levels to go back up to the pre-managed levels. So that's the kind of ratio. On the provider side, most in-depth discussions have been with Anthem and Harvard Pilgrim. Anthem are intent on us addressing lower back pain before anything else for them, because it's their highest financial priority. And they are organizing to fund a study for 120 people with lower back pain. Anecdotally, we know that we've got about a 30% very high responder rate and about a 30% medium and about a 40% not. Again, it depends on how much of that back pain is governed by the central mediation, so anxiety. And roughly 30% of lower back pain, or people with lower back pain, report anxiety being the largest driver of their back pain. And they are they're so keen to do that for lower back pain that they've said that once the study is done, they would reimburse us as a wellness device prior to FDA approval, because they see such a large cost saving there to be made. Harvard Pilgrim have already listed us as a wellness device on their wellness offering to members. They also are interested in low back pain. And then fibromyalgia, they've said as soon as we have the FDA approval plus peer review data, that they will reimburse. Does that answer both questions?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it seems you answered the question. Maybe more questions.
Hey, Richard, this is Tunde from the Blue Venture Fund. Wondering how soon do you expect the clinical trials to be completed? I think you had mentioned it, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, certainly. So the Duke study the efficacy portion will read out in January. The Mount Sinai study will be about a month later. It'll be either February or March. Both are now being done as remote studies. Duke was set up as a remote from the start, so they've been recruiting very quickly. Mount Sinai actually started earlier but had to stop because of COVID, and is now being relaunched as a remote study. So that should be done in February or March. That means that we will have our first FDA indication end of March if we get breakthrough status for fibro, which we should do, and then April, May if we don't, and then the neuropathic pain will be a self-predicated 510K.
And the longest cohort that you have, you're tracking is with that Duke study?
The longest, the year that we already have on fibromyalgia was our first pilot, which was 20 people.
Okay.
And just as a reference, the Duke study only has to have 20% of the effect size of the pilot for us to sail through FDA.
Do you have any more questions? Yan still without video and without audio.
Hi everyone. Sorry,
Hi,
excuse me for the camera. So it's pretty late here. It's in the night, and I don't want to wake up my partner, so I just keep the light off. And so I'm from W. Harper. W. Harper is a cross-border fund. So we majorly invest in the US and Greater China. And currently we are managing 3 funds. 1 US dollar fund, 1 RMB fund, and 1 US dollar fund, but it's dedicated to Taiwanese entrepreneurs or companies with significant operation in Taiwan. So we invest in early stage companies, so seed, pre-A or A round stage, and the ticket size is between 1 to 5 million, so we don't write big checks. And we invest in all kinds of healthcare companies, so from device, therapeutics, digital health, healthcare service, etc. So if you have good opportunities, we always welcome the opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions to Sana Health? Maybe
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Richard, good presentation. This is Martin. Can you, I didn't get the cost of your device, and the second question, and how many sales units you've sold now, or if you're still just in R&D. And then the second part of it is on the FDA side. Are you getting FDA approval because you're making medical claims to cure diseases, or is it just because you're using some CDS, or it's the electronics thing? And would there be an opportunity to sell this device to consumers without medical claims?
Yes, both good questions. So we have a 513G approval already. So we have the official confirmation that we are a low risk device, which does then mean that the de novo and the 510Ks are purely around efficacy, because Carlos Pinto has already signed off. We are on market as a wellness device through the website. And we've sold 150 so far on complete stealth mode, because we have some COVID supply constraints, and we're trying to make sure that the 1,000 that we need to sell for the Mighty study direct, we have enough devices for it, because basically going into the next round, if we only sell direct to consumer as a wellness device, we've seen that we get people buying for almost anything you can imagine that's a real problem in their life, from sleep and fatigue that we've got a lot of data on, all the way through to TBI. And that's great, but it doesn't help us sell the investment story for Series A, where I want to be able to say this, because currently our CAC is basically 0. And obviously that's not going to continue longer term. So I thought, okay, if we take 1,000 people out of the 289,000 people from the Mighty, we'll have a very strong argument about how our CAC is going to stay under control for the short term. So yeah, the FDA is purely about the marketing claims. We become a class 2 as soon as we are talking about any at-risk population. So anything pain or sleep or mental health related. The FDA have said they're going to treat everything pain related that we do as one bucket. So that's one de novo, and then everything else is a sub-predicated 510K. And then in the mental health bucket, in which they include addiction, anxiety, and depression, all of which we've either got studies done or we've got studies planned, they will require one more de novo in the mental health bucket, and then everything else within that bucket will be a sub-predicated 510K. And then on the cost of the device, it's at scale will be sub $100 for COGS, and then we're going out on a subscription. The Mighty study, we're aiming just to test the direct consumer at $50 a month, because we don't know what the macroeconomic situation is going to be like, We know that fibro people have a tendency to have lost their jobs and have further financial difficulties. On the reimbursed side, the discussions with Anthem and Harvard Pilgrim have been about $100 a month. They will get a lot more for that as well, because it'll be integrated into the standard of care. So it'll be integrated into EHRs and physician portals and so on. So slightly different offering, same underlying tech than at the $100 a month. We are making some military sales already. Some have gone to Canadian Special Operations Command for fatigue mitigation. And the military seem to be have a great preference for buying up front, and those devices are being sold for $1,800 a piece. Does that answer both questions? Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you very much. The time is almost over, so we have just a few minutes for one more question. If you have one more short question, please.
Julia, can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
Richard, very intriguing. Maybe I missed it, but can you talk a little bit about where your IP is coming from? What kind of competitive moat do you have around your IP? And what is the competitive situation out there with other technologies and other devices?
So you say, what was the very first part of that question? So
the first part is, what is the origin of the IP? Yeah.
Oh, the origin of the IP.
Yeah, and how defensible it is. Do you have any patents and any kind of proprietary part that can't be easily duplicated?
Yeah, certainly. So basically, I originally came up with the idea from looking at all of the research that went into long-term meditation and how meditation changes the brain. That's how I sort of backed into, okay, these are the frequencies I need, and this is how do I get there? The file that we've had two patents published, issued. One was issued in June last year, and that covers the combined use of auditory visual stimulation for the treatment of almost every, well, it covers everything we have anecdotal data on, which is everything we're now working on and a lot more. So pain, TBI, PTSD, stroke, sleep, you name it, we ran around getting small bits of anecdotal data, and so that all went into the first patent. So anybody trying to use any audiovisual stimulation in the MIC patent will not be able to breach that first patent. The second patent, which was issued 2 weeks ago, covers the sensor on the forehead and creating a closed loop feedback system, and that will cover any closed loop feedback system that does anything visual, auditory, or tactile, or any combination of those three. After that, we have 5 further patents that are filed in pain, anxiety, depression, addiction, and fibromyalgia. And those expand on the foundational patent by broadening the claims to include any auditory signal or any visual signal separate as well as together. So that's really the first moat. The next moat is the FDA, because someone else is going to have to prove what they're doing. If someone tries to do just auditory or just visual, first of all, they'll have to prove efficacy. So that's the first challenge, and the second challenge will be that the 5 latest patents will cover that. In terms of competition, within the fibromyalgia space, people were paying $450 a month out of pocket in the largest study ever done on it, and that was in 2012. Half of that was paid out of pocket for drugs, and half of it was massage, acupuncture, and other alternative treatments. So on a dollar-by-dollar basis, massage and acupuncture really are our initial competition. And obviously during the time of COVID, people can't go get their massages and acupuncture.
No, I'm sorry, I meant competition in other similar platforms like neurofeedback devices.
Yeah, so the big one is probably VR, and applied VR is the one I watch most closely. VR is basically split into 2 categories. There are there are some exceptions like Karina are doing something really smart in niche areas, but by and large, it's either distraction therapy, which we massively outcompete, or cognitive behavioral therapy delivered through VR, which also we outcompete on efficacy. Fibromyalgia is such a large market that is so poorly served that I think it's going to be a while until we really butt heads with direct competitors. I do regard people like Applied VR as potential collaborators in future, because ultimately what we have is a direct stimulation device that is much better at addressing problems when they are at their worst, whereas the cognitive behavioral therapy, it tends to have better results when people have come off that worst phase and they've already got some improvements happening. So I kind of regard those guys as future collaboration, although there are obviously some competitive nature as well there. On the TDCS side, not on fibromyalgia. Yes, on the depression side, very much so on the wellness side, but they will take a while to get to those markets. We're basically focusing on the areas where we can have the largest impact with the people who've got the worst problems, and we are definitely outperforming TDCS in all of those areas quite significantly. When you come down into the sort of more wellness areas and people are having milder problems, then TDCS is a much bigger type of competition for us.
Richard, yeah, thanks for your answer. That's it. Yeah, because we have next startup. I would like to invite Macromoltek, Monica.
Just thank you, everyone, before I go.
Thank you very much.
Okay, does that come up okay? Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, we can see us.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. Great, well, thank you. So at Macromoltek, we design targeted antibodies that are 50 times cheaper to discover and can be found in under a week. And my name is Monica Brando. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Macromoltek. So I did my PhD in chemical engineering at Johns Hopkins University, where I was studying the correlations between structure and function of proteins using software. Initially, I did both the wet lab and the computational work for my thesis, but I quickly realized that I didn't enjoy the lab work as much. So the second half of my work was entirely computational, collaborating with other scientists who did the wet lab work to carry out validations. So this allowed me to go beyond just what I learned or what I did for my PhD, but also really understand the how software could be used to create better proteins. Towards the end of my PhD, I got interested in the commercial aspects of the software, and I wanted to understand why scientists in industry, specifically at pharma companies, were not using it to develop new drugs. And so what I found is that there's a big disconnect between the academic problems that software was designed to answer and the problems that industry needed to answer. And so most of the companies that I talked to, about 90% of them, wanted software that was focused around antibodies. And so that's what I did when starting Macromoltek, was keep that in mind. And so we've built software and all of the algorithms from the ground up and have focused our algorithms specifically on antibodies and what makes antibody-antigen interactions unique from other protein-protein interactions. This has allowed us to make giant strides in an area where others have really struggled. And so aside from myself, my co-founder is Susanna Kaufman. She's my mom, and she taught me how to program at a really young age and set me along the path to where I am today. Her background is in chemical engineering, and she has over 20 years of experience in systems development, much of it for the fintech industry. The fact that you can check your bank account on your phone today in a fraction of a second, you have her to thank for that. So why focus on drug discovery? The average drug takes about 15 years and $2.5 billion to develop, and about 1 billion of that is often occurring before you even get to humans. Most drug candidates never make it to humans, much less get released to the market because of the high failure rates. And so that's what we want to address, is how do you make strides in that timeline and also reduce the failure rates. Today's methods for discovering drugs have two main problems that we address. One is that they can only access targets that are well understood and easy to work with. And the second is that they often come from animal systems, which means that there's still a lot of work to do and a lot of areas where they can fail before they ever get put into humans. We've built a system that enables us to bind previously inaccessible targets very rapidly. We're using this integrated systems approach. We're able to take advantage of novel biophysical modeling, trained neural networks, and wet lab validation. And through the systematic approach, our software is able to continuously learn and improve. And this allows us to get to where we can build antibodies in weeks instead of years. So every new project we do increases a key aspect of the technology, be that accuracy, speed, or predictability. We feed that back into the system and we get better every time. And this allows us to eventually get to where we can have fully validated antibodies in a matter of weeks. Right now, we're at about 2 months. So already we've been able to design antibodies to over a dozen targets with a diverse set of disease indications. So in these two examples I have, we were provided very little information about the target. In the antibody on the left, we had no antibodies that had ever been attempted before against this target. And in our first attempt, we were able to test and validate a handful of antibodies with the desired properties. In the second example, we worked with a partner who had tried various methods of discovering antibodies and had never gotten any successful experiments. So here again, in our first attempt, we were able to generate a handful of antibodies with desired properties, and which have now been shown to be functional antibodies. And so as a YC graduate, we know how to build and grow fast. We've raised over $1 million in non-dilutive capital from the National Science Foundation, and later $2.8 million from the likes of Neotribe and Data Collective. We've already generated over $350,000 in revenue from half a dozen paid pilot programs with leading biopharma companies. And with that, we've created a pipeline of more than $450 million for antibody development contracts with biotech and pharma alike. We work with a split business model. So we have a different set of different type of return from biotech versus larger pharma companies, where we share IP and revenue with smaller biotech companies and work more collaborative with them. And then with pharma companies, we just get milestone payments off preclinical and clinical development assets once they start to develop them. And those milestones are worth about $50 million for each target with the larger pharma companies. So with this raise, we hope to hit profitability by late 2021. So we're opening a round of $5 million to build a lab and convert our $450 million pipeline into development contracts and start hitting some of those milestones. Don't miss out on a multi-billion-dollar opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. Now questions from investors.
So can you tell me a little bit more about your team, and particularly how many full-time staff, how many part-time staff, or how long you have been working together?
Yeah, so most of the team has been working together for about 4 years. Suzanne and I worked on it for a little while before we hired anybody else. And we're a team of about 15 scientists. About 10 of those are on the computational, so pure computational side of their work, but they all have biochemistry backgrounds. And then 4 of them do the actual lab work. So we do have a small lab where we test all of our antibodies.
How does COVID impact your teamwork?
Well, so initially it impacted our lab because we had to shut it down for about a week and then figure out how we could have, follow all the safety measures. So we slowed down a lot of what we could do because we could only have 1 person in the lab at a time. But right now, I think it doesn't really impact any of that anymore. And then the impact on the computational side has been more that we've had to learn how to use interactive tools that are computational ourselves rather than interacting in person. So we all work remotely, so we use a lot of remote tools for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question here about your therapeutic modality. So beyond antibodies, is your approach applicable to other protein structures or protein scaffolds?
Yeah, so exactly. The idea would be to take what we've learned from antibodies and apply it to other scaffolds, but it would have to be scaffolds that are large families where we can generate similar data or apply some of the techniques of the data we understood about, like what makes an antibody unique. So we would need a really good generalizable scaffold to take what we've done and apply it to a different one. But yes, we've thought about that. So good question.
Okay, thank you.
We have time. More questions, please. Irina, Safa.
I'll jump in. I don't know if I saw a competition slide. Just curious if you can touch on the competitive positioning.
Yeah, so primarily our competition comes from like up and coming new wet lab technologies. So there are new ways that you can get antibodies that have proven to be very fast and efficacious. I think what sets us apart is that when we design things computationally, we can be very targeted about where we're hitting on a protein. So we can go after epitopes that are more likely to be functional. And this also allows us to go after really difficult targets. So for example, if you have a protein that's in a class of proteins that has like hundreds of different very, very similar proteins, we can narrow in on what makes one stand out from those others. So think about like GPCR classes or something where you have tons of really similar proteins and you want to be able to single one out of them. So our computational techniques allow us to do that. And one of our examples is that second case study I had, which was one of those types of proteins. And then as far as computational competition, there are a couple other companies that have started to do antibody design. They take a more AI-based approach where they generate a lot of lab data and then go back and learn from the lab data, whereas we've taken kind of the opposite approach, which is really understand antibodies, build out the processes, and then test our hypotheses using the lab work and then feedback that way. So just slightly different approaches.
We have one question from attendees. What kind of diseases are you targeting at the time?
Sure. So internally, we have a couple of different diseases, more in the rare disease space, so rare infections or rare cancers. But most of what we do is with partners, and so therefore it's whatever the partner is targeting. And we've seen everything from neurodegenerative disease, a lot of like autoimmune disease targets and cancer targets. So it doesn't really depend on the disease. It's more target specific rather than disease specific.
Interesting. Irina, do you
may
have questions? Oh.
May I ask a question a little bit about the platform? What is your proprietary data set that you're leveraging for epitope design and binding to certain classes of proteins?
Yeah, so our data comes from, initially from public data, and then we've been able to generate both the, wet lab data, so data that we can take in that has tested different hypotheses and feed that back in. But we also do a lot to generate, simulated data, and are very careful about how we simulate that data to answer certain questions. So we have a really large data set that kind of covers all those different things. So while initially it was really built on publicly available data, I think at this point it's probably more like 20/80, where 80% of what we have is our own data.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you able to model also immunogenicity potential or any adverse event potential other than binding?
Yeah, so a lot of what we did initially when we started building out the platform was to try to think about, how are different properties of antibodies taken into account. So we looked at things like developability and binding. And now, sorry, I think my music started playing somehow. Okay. And so we've taken that into account. One of the things that we do when we build our antibodies is build them with human scaffolds so that you end up with antibodies that have less likely to have an immunogenic effect. So that's one of the ways we take that into account. The other thing is we know things that make antibodies work better. And so we just try to remove that from our data set or optimize around that in our data set. So we can't really test for it so much as take information and use that to guide how we build them in the first place.
Good.
Yeah. Hi, Monica. Thanks for the presentation. I have just a quick question about the technology in general, how it works. So does a company, like a pharma company, come to you with a target and then you design an antibody to bind to that target? Or do they come with an idea, like a monoclonal antibody that they bring to you, and you just take and optimize it?
No, they come to us with target. So initially we did do a lot of like optimization, but I think in the last 2 years, we've really focused on that whole design aspect of it and starting from target and not from known antibodies.
Thanks. And if it's unavailable data without the CDA, how much does it cost to find an antibody that will bind to a particular target?
Oh, that's a good question. So like, what does it cost us to generate a new antibody?
Yeah.
Time? Yeah.
Time?
So, I mean, it's like our staff costs is really the primary thing, because it's all computational work and it's pretty inexpensive computationally. Like our algorithms are incredibly efficient. So it's really not that. The part that's a little bit more costly is actually making the antibodies and testing them. And that normally costs, a couple $1,000s per antibody.
Okay, thank you. And do you actually do the testing of an antibody, or you just create it like computationally?
No, we test it. So we take what we aim to do is get down to a really small set. So we're aiming for like 10 to 15 antibodies per target or per epitope, but more realistically. And then we'll, synthesize those, test them for binding. And then if we see binding, then we'll figure out what the right functional assay is to use and kind of progress a little bit from there.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. And just coming back to the price thing, how much would it cost to a company, like a pharma company? Essentially, what's your price tag for developing an antibody like that?
Right. So our price tag is in the milestones more than anything else. So our upfront cost is pretty modest. It's normally in like the $100,000 range. But the price is that is really like $50 million, right? Because if it makes it to market, that's what we're going to make off of it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Dear investors, please be active. Ask your questions. No?
I would keep asking them because that's really interesting. Just stop me once time's over. Do you plan to expand into the sort of drug development area and essentially develop your own proprietary drugs at some point with your own targets that you can discover potentially?
So we do have our own internal pipeline, but our plan is not to go past like animal models. We would probably spin it out into joint ventures rather than develop it ourselves.
All right. Okay, thanks. And I mean, that's obviously a very different question, different field. To expand into transcriptomic medicines like RNAi and viral vector design, would that be completely different from what you have now? Or is it like a small add-on to what you have now?
It could be an add-on, because I think similar to that scaffold, like a lot of the AAVs have really common scaffolds that you could take advantage of and use it to, target something else. And we've talked about doing some stuff. We have like a vector we've been looking at on how we could do something similar or take advantage of like existing antibody information and apply it to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if you don't have more questions, we can thank you very much, Monica. That was great speech, and thanks for all your answers. And now I invite our next startup. Next startup, Suggestic. Victor, are you here with us, please?
So at Suggestic, we've created a personalized nutrition development platform. And so we can now modify our diet based on our genome, microbiome, glycemic response, or food sensitivities. However, even if we know what to eat, we still struggle to decide what to cook, what to order at a restaurant, or what to buy at the grocery store. We all need guidance. We need help knowing what is both good for our bodies and delicious to eat. And we need convenience. We want to know how and which are the best foods for us. So at Suggestic, our main insight was that making it super easy and convenient to find delicious, affordable, and healthy foods was a data discovery problem that we could solve. We realized that if we could match what our body needs with the food we like the most, and then further match that to the food options around us, we could effectively allow for food to become medicine. And already most of us want food to be medicine. However, for this to work, we need mobile apps. We need mobile apps when we are at the kitchen, at the restaurant, or at the grocery store. And we need them to help us find the most convenient food options based on our personalized dietary needs. So there's already 60,000 nutrition-related app publishers. Everyone from health plans to fitness companies and from lab tests to nutraceuticals all have or want their own app. However, the problem is most apps take over 2 years to develop and it costs over $1 million. And all of them end up rebuilding the same modules and functionality, license the same data, and implement very similar infrastructure. So at Suggesting, our platform allows them to build their own app, either by using our APIs and SDKs, or they can publish our white label version of our app that enables them to include meal planner, grocery list, shopping list, recipes, and restaurant information directly into their apps. So our solution additionally allows them to build a guidance and suggestions in the form of create their own content, personalize it to each body by using different lab test devices, customize to each individual preferences, guide them through the process, suggest what they should eat, and then track and improve continuously the suggestions. So our customers create personalized nutrition content in the form of rule sets, guidance, and then bundle their own diagnostic coaching and nutrition products in such a way that if they are more content creators, they can have their own microbiome test, coaching, and probiotics into one individual dietary program. This dietary program can then live not only in their app, but in third-party apps, as in United Healthcare, where they can, instead of building their own programs, they can use third-party programs in it. So every one of our programs can live not only in different white labeled apps, but also in third-party apps. And this allows our customers to actually build something that enhances the user experience by giving them the tools and the guidance they need to succeed, including our augmented reality version of or module, which overlays the top-rated menu options at over 520,000 restaurants, 90% of our restaurants in the US. And this is actually the kind of technology that we've been building, and we have several patents behind it, including something that allows us to decode based on every menu item and its description, what are the ingredients and 179 nutrients behind each of them with an accuracy of 98.5 of area under the curve in an ROC, which is kind of like almost twice as good as a human. In addition to actually learning continuously what are the things that people prefer and what are the things that actually lead to the best outcomes. So at Suggestic, we help our customers build beautiful and powerful apps. We also help them publish their own programs and dietary content with their own lab test devices, coaching, and meals and supplements. And these bundles, they can then be delivered through their own apps or third-party apps. And finally, we expose all our building blocks so that they can incorporate this into their own portals and enhance their own apps. So we do not compete with program creators, app publishers, clinics, gyms, coaches, or dietitians. We actually empower them all to get to the consumers and improve this user experience. And as we all scale faster as an ecosystem by making the user more successful. So, and for the partners themselves, instead of 2 years of development time, they can release an app in as little as a week. And instead of paying millions of dollars up front, they pay per user per month. This alone, the development side of our business, is already an 11 billion total addressable market, growing at a 44% a year compound annual rate. And in addition to, we can also have revenue share from a lot of the diagnostics, coaching, food, and supplements that are distributed along with the programs. So this has allowed us, since we pivoted in January of this year into a B2B2C model, to continuously close contracts. And in the last 10 months, we've closed over $9 million in total contract value, 3.2 in ARR, and we have over 1 million more in final contracting stage out of 72 qualified opportunities in our pipeline and 170 leads. We get 1 to 3 leads per day coming in through the internet, and with almost no marketing at all. And between our customers that have already closed, United Healthcare, MyDNA, Biome, among others. So as we also released our Android version this month, and we are increasing very quickly our monthly run rate and expect to get to cash flow positive in Q1 of this year. And also the Android version and the deployments we have are reducing the time lag between closing the contracts and actually monetizing them. So our competitive advantages for all of our customers are that we're the only ones who have a platform that has full data and functionality that they can't get anywhere else, in addition to the ability to fully personalize, include restaurant augmented reality, and most importantly, it allows the partners to create their own content, share it with other app distributors and publishers, and have this content or these rule sets, these programs filter out any type of grocery, recipe, meal plan, or restaurant menu item. So we have many potential exit strategies. Our main objective evidently is an IPO, but by sitting in the intersection of three major industries, we see that any of our partners or customers could end up being an acquirer. In fact, we've already had 6 acquisition inquiries from companies as varied as Samsung, Nestle, and Viome in all industries. So I like to say that we have centuries of eating experience, which is not quite unique to us, but we do have an amazing team that has scaled businesses in the past. We are, actually this slide is increasingly inaccurate. We've increased the team by 13 people since I put it together. So it's kind of like already old. We have an amazing team of advisors and investors that have come through the time, everything from venture capitalists to other entrepreneurs and industry leaders. And we are right now in the process of closing our seed extension. It's a 2 million seed extension. We've raised 5 million prior. And this seed extension we've received over 1.3 million already and have commitments for another 500,000. So we're in the tail end of this. This is a price round at a 10.5 million pre-money valuation. And this should allow us to get to cash flow positive and raise an A round in the first half of next year. So at Suggestic, we are building the tools to enable the full ecosystem to collaborate and help everyone make food as medicine a reality. And with it, help billions of people around the world lead healthier, happier, and longer lives.
Thank you, Victor. I feel hungry after your pitch. Very interesting. Yeah, very promising technology, very promising startup. Investors, I'm sure you have questions.
And a shout out to DreamIt, because we were there 4 years ago. We were, I think, one of the first healthcare. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, hey Victor, you were before my time, but I've heard great things about your platform, and clearly you're making a lot of progress. So congrats. But since I got the mic, maybe I'll hit you with a couple of questions here.
Sure.
The first one is what is your actual? I didn't quite get it. Maybe just flip through the slides very quickly. What is your current recurring revenue?
And we have a 3.2 million. Is what we have in contracts as.
So that's what you have booked right now. That's booked revenue. Yes. Or is that so? What did you actually do in 20? What will you actually do in 2020?
So in 2020, we are expecting around $500,000 in sales, mainly because a lot of that revenue, even if it comes in as a yearly fee, is then broken down into monthly revenue. And second, a lot of the contracts actually get unlocked once they deploy. So they start paying upon deployment of their app. So that was why it is important for us to release the Android version, which we did not have. And the Android version also allows us to have SDKs, which have the user interface, which normally takes more time to include.
And that revenue, that 3.2 million you mentioned, is that sort of locked and loaded revenue, or does it depend on utilization of the platform?
It is based on the minimum fees in the contracts. So what we have is minimum fees per month, minimum fees. and those minimum fees can sometimes get delayed if they don't release. But the minimum fees, we are not considering additional per user per month fees on top of that, and we're not considering any of the rev share that is also in many of our contracts.
Got it.
So that is only minimum fees over the next 3 years. Contracts are an average of three, well, not an average. Most of our contracts are 3 years in length.
Got it. Okay. Last question is just switch gears a little bit. Lots of logos on your traction slide. I'm trying to get the theme there and what your go-to-market is. I mean, I'm sure you're not trying to sell to everyone. So sort of what is your go-to-market? What defines your kind of ideal customer?
So right now, what we found is that we actually are going after early adopters. And early adopters is a very interesting segment because they want to be the first. We have, and out of early adopters, we have everything from United Healthcare on one side to startups in like MyDNA or Biome Health or others on the other side. So what we've seen is the ones that are rushing fastest to come in are in the wellness category, direct to consumer health, that have either lab test devices or some sort of dietary intervention where they can enhance user experience and actually include a new revenue stream. So what we're seeing is there's a lot of customers that by publishing an app with us can convert a one-time DNA test or microbiome tests or into a subscription model. And that's what we are seeing closing first. However, we have a full branch out throughout the whole ecosystem. We have fitness companies, we have wellness, healthcare, food, we have food delivery companies. So it's really branching out because the new companies that are coming in actually start collaborating with others that we have, and they improve the content, they improve the value of this experience to their users. So I would say, but if I had to choose, the one that we're seeing most traction, just to be clear, is in the direct to consumer health. However, we are starting the pilot test with United Healthcare in Q1, which can really be much larger. And we have some large customers like Amway and there's a bunch of others in the pipeline, as you saw. That also in the food category, there's a lot. So, but I would say early adopters is one way of looking at it. And as you may recall from Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, the early adopters, you'll have one or two per industry because they want to be the first. But then as you move to Crossing the Chasm, and that's really potentially, for instance, in relation to DreamIt, what you want to do when going to the healthcare side is have a very a unique offering or a very vertical offering. And what we're doing in that realm is a CDC's diabetes prevention program. So in the same way Omada Health has an app for their users, there's 1,500 CDC DPP companies, and they don't have an app. So we can provide a white labelable app for those CDC DPP providers and go at risk with them on the reimbursement.
I have a question here. Some more details on your business model. So is it basically B2B2C? So okay, and so the end user basically never pays for the subscription itself, or only
well,
a certain share of it?
Yeah, so if they do pay, they pay our customer directly. So we're seeing two models. United Healthcare will give it out for free to their members, whereas DNA will charge a monthly subscription, and then part of that they turn around and pay us.
So you're basically not dealing with the end consumer. You're always dealing with B2B.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. More questions, please.
We were direct to consumer for a while, so we learned a lot. We learned all the pains that come with it. And I think that what we learned the most is that it's a highly fragmented ecosystem. So we had a platform that had all these different dietary programs, but in keto, we were not only competing against pure keto apps or pure fasting apps, we were competing against those who are selling you keto bars. So the user acquisition cost is very high when you're trying to get into pure apps. However, what we're doing as a user experience enhancement, we are getting all those bars and like all those food supplements, lab test companies that have a much higher lifetime value, and we are enhancing with our digital tools their own offerings.
Got it.
Victor, can you give us a little bit more detail on how your customers use your platform? What do they take? Just take, for instance, your biggest customer. I think you said it's a D2C fitness or healthcare partner. What exactly do they take from you, and what is the offering that they provide to their end user that they didn't have before?
Sure. I think United Healthcare is a very good example. United Healthcare we're working with the enterprise and individual section, which is they go directly either to employers or individuals for their health insurance. And what they're offering is a United Healthcare branded app that will be delivered initially for this pilot test. We will be going after 28,000 people in their coaching group that are coached by Rally Health. As you may know, Rally Health is part of Optum, which is part of United Health Group. So it's a sister company that does the wellness coaching. And what we've done with Rally Health is create 4 dietary programs aligned with our coaching practices for diabetes, heart health, weight loss, and healthy living. And those 4 programs match their coaching and are delivered through the app. So every time you have coaching through Rally Health, and you get the app, and the app then gives you the dietary recommendations aligned with that. And so the way they pay us is per member per month. And that's not only how they're paying us for the pilot, but that's how they will pay us as they roll out to hopefully to the 41 million ENI members.
So what they pay you for is the dietary plans that you have created and make it available to their members?
No, they do. In this particular case, they're not paying for that. We are actually giving them that for free because we didn't want to reduce the value of the per member per month. The per member per month is what they pay. That includes the technology to deliver these programs. And if they were to buy programs outside of United Healthcare and use any other of our partners in there, they would pay for that as well. And we would take a revenue share of that. In this case in particular, the programs are built by them, by Rally Health. So they're not paying for the programs. They're giving us the content that goes into the platform and that is then delivered through the app, to the United Healthcare app.
So they're paying for the platform that you have created to help them
Correct.
Customize the program.
And for their white label app, basically.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. More questions? Do you have any more questions, the investors? No?
I'll just make a quick comment because I think it's interesting. And what Victor talked about, starting out B2C. Great article by Paul Yock in Fast Company. Paul Yock is one of the founders of Stanford Biodesign program. And it's just interesting. In that article, he cites that 61% of digital health companies that start B2C end up pivoting to B2B. And that's probably no surprise to you, Victor, given your sort of experience and pivot that you made. But I know as investors, we often have sort of an almost immediate allergic reaction when we see a digital health platform that's starting out B2C, when we think there's a real compelling B2B or B2B2C value prop.
Yeah, and I think that transition, we started, so early on when we were at DreamIt, we were B2B. We were trying to do a very vertical for diabetes. And we found very quickly that it was very hard to actually get all the clinical trials, everything and all those ducks in the line so that we could actually get to the employers, et cetera. Many companies were trying to do the same. And when we went direct to consumer, what we learned was how to create different interventions. And the interesting thing is the most successful ones were 20 times more successful in conversion, retention, every metric than the least. And it didn't have to do with the underlying technology. It had to do with the content itself, with matching what the person wants as a result with what the dietary program and the content are offering. And so we've taken both learnings of how can we get through to the businesses in the employer side, which is a very different market to ours. We're not selling to employers. We're not selling to, at least not now, to providers. We are really actually giving them the catalog of our partners so that they can choose which of our partners makes more sense to them. And I think that's how it will progress. We will become agnostic. So the opportunity we did not see until actually United Healthcare asked us to white label the product for them. And it got us thinking. And we were undergoing the United Healthcare Tech Startups Accelerator at the time in last year. And we realized that it was a great business model and we pivoted to that and never looked back. It was amazing how we've had 170 companies, and most of the sales have been myself. So now we're hiring a business development team, but it's been a very interesting process.
Thank you very much, Victor, for this speech and for answers. I would like let you know that Victor and Monica and Richard will be presented also at our Biohacking Congress in Silicon Valley in Menlo Park on November 20th, and we invite investors to join us at the venue. There will be only 50 attendees who will be invited personally, biohackers, health optimization experts, founders of selected health companies, health technologies and ecological companies, and investors and vendors from health tech, biotech areas. More than 15 speakers, top speakers, you can learn from first hands, and you actually can start your biohacking journey for health optimization, performance optimization, and longevity if you are not biohacker yet. So please join us at the venue. Just email me if you would like to join us. For those who cannot join us in Menlo Park, it is still opportunity to watch live stream, because we are going to live stream this event all day for a very big global community. So yeah, you can find a link on our website and get access to live stream, or join us at the venue. Just email me. And before we finish this meetup, I would like to introduce one more time our team and our main fundraising partner who help us select startups and run this fundraising program, Anna and Adrian. So please, Anna and
Thank
Adrian.
you, Julia.
Yeah, could you please explain what are our next steps in this program and maybe some insights for investors as well?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Julia, and thank you everybody who joined today. I personally will be in Menlo Park on the Biohacking Congress. So if you'll have a moment to stop by, we'll be more than happy to connect in person. We have amazing companies. Today you saw just 3 of them, but we do have more to show you. And you can, of course, personally meet founders, learn more about them, about the deal room, some insights of the deal, the dynamic of the deal, join, of course, the current round, or maybe get your eyes and your hands on the next round to join later if your investment focus is slightly later. And of course, first of all, I would say the most important is to try out all the cool biohacks, because I think we all here work in the venture and in the finance, and sometimes we forget that, first of all, it's all about us as humans and about our productivity, about our longevity and our health. So Biohacking Congress will be specifically dedicated to not just connecting with industry peers, but also about implementing some of those technologies and trying them out. And me and Adrian, our main goal, our background, we've been entrepreneurs, investors ourselves. On my side is primarily on software. Adrian has more hardware experience, so we're combining our knowledge and expertise and select invest health tech companies for you guys. And again, thank you so much for being here today. Would love to chat more.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks for being our partner, and thank you one more time to all our investors who joined us and provided the feedbacks, and we hope that our startups will get success and will close the deals.
There is no doubt. There is only one way forward.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. We are looking forward to meeting you at the venue. Just email me or watch live stream, and our next meetups and congresses obviously will be announced for you. And we will make some follow-ups after this event. Hopefully some of them interested in startups and would like continue conversation in-person chat and emails. Thank you very much. It was great to have you today.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. See you all very soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.